Hey everyone, welcome to the Succeeding Over All Roadblocks Lifecast, a lifecast about self-discovery and vibrating higher in every area of your life. I am Keisha Whitaker, the creator and host of the SOAR Lifecast, and I want to welcome you to season 2. And this is a great time because it's Black History Month, and I am celebrating Black excellence everywhere I can find it. And today I have two ladies who are near and dear to me joining me on the show, and they are phenomenal women. Both sisters, they both have their PhDs, they graduated from HBCUs, they're doing amazing things in their careers. And doctors Sonya and Yvonne Johnson are here to talk about two books that they've written that are really geared toward Black history and sharing our history and knowing and honoring our our unsung and hidden heroes that have been around for centuries. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sonya and Yvonne Johnson, who both are educators. Like I said, doctorates. They have attended Clark Atlanta University, They're both members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and they are just two awesome, awesome women. So let me bring them in. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast. Sonya, welcome back to the podcast. So wonderful to have you back with us. I told you Sonya was a part of our season 1 finale with me and my sister circle. She is a member of the sister circle, and I had to have her back because she is phenomenal in telling stories about Black history and Black excellence. And there was no better duo that I thought I should have on than Sonya and Yvonne. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes. So you all have written a couple of books and have done so much in the education space, but I want to take a time for the audience to really get to know you a little bit. So we know that you're sisters and you all have had this similar trajectory in your life. And I wanted to really highlight that, but also what is the age difference between you two?
We're 8 years apart.
Wow. I could have sworn that you guys were like a year or two apart because I was like, you all went to the same colleges, you have the same background in education, sorority life, like every step of the way you guys have done the same thing. So I can see that Sonya has really emulated her big sister.
Oh, okay. Yes. And it's odd that you mentioned that because for the longest people thought we were twins. So, and it didn't help when we were younger. Of course, you could see the age difference more. My mama still would dress us alike. So, definitely we're not twins.
Well, yeah, I have known you, Sonya, for many years and met your sister, of course, through all of our gatherings and things that we've done. So we've all become much closer over the years. And I have had, an immense joy in knowing you both and getting to know your family, and everything that you guys are doing is extremely, extremely phenomenal and inspiring in and of yourselves. I consider you two history makers.
Oh,
You all are doing, like I said, Yvonne, tell me a little bit about what you do in education and what your background is.
My background, well, actually, I was a history major in college, but I ended up with special ed. So I worked with several schools in the local school district and work with their special ed population. Okay.
And Sonya, what about you?
My background was chemistry, so I'm a science nerd. So with my professional life, I'm the assistant principal with the local education system.
Okay. Yes. So in education, and then these books that you've written are very key for students or for anyone for that matter. But I know one is a children's book and then one is a fiction novel. So let's start out talking about The Ride of Pride. You ladies are both co-authors of a book called The Ride of Pride, which really highlights the inventors and people in history who've done amazing things and that we don't even know about. So tell us a little bit about The Ride of Pride and what that's all about.
The Ride of Pride basically is a story about a young man who basically did not want to do his homework assignment. And any parent can probably tell you they know that story probably too well. So he basically didn't want to do the assignment that was given to him. So his parents try to figure out a way to make the assignment or the homework assignment fun and interactive. So they decide to take him on a ride throughout the city to point out different African American inventions that were invented by African Americans such as us, like us. So they take him on a ride of pride. So it's very interesting for you to learn that things we come in contact every day in our houses, outside of our houses, at work, etc., that were invented by African Americans that a lot of people, once they read the book, they really don't know about. And the reason why we wanted to write the book is because with my students, when I was teaching middle school, I would have them to create inventions, or if they could make a model of an invention that they researched.
And I know, and to me, I used to be an instructional resource teacher. So during Black History Month, I would ask my students to research different Black inventors and also either draw or make the invention, and we would post it outside our classroom. So I was doing that for several years, unknowing that Sonya was having her students create their own inventions.
So when did you all decide to write the book, and who are some of the characters or the main stories or inventors that you've highlighted?
We decided to write the book just through a conversation with our father. And he was like, we need to share this information with others. So we decided to write a book, and he decided to be the illustrator. And so that was the first edition was in 2007.
Yeah, and then we actually relaunched it in, was it
2017?
Yeah, so we redid the cover, added some more inventions, etc. So some of the inventors we talk about: John Burr, the inventor of the lawnmower, if you watch on the book, Marie Brown, who invented the security camera. And what interesting about her story is that she worked in the healthcare field, and she would have to work late shifts. So she was feeling unsafe coming home at night. So her husband was an electrician. So they got together and used a television to create a security system so she could be able to feel safe when she was coming home. So it's just different things that people don't realize. You know, the golf tee, the potato chips, which was invented by George Crumb. And the reason why he invented potato chips, because he was getting mad because he was a cook at the Saratoga Cafe, and he was getting mad because they complained about the potatoes not being thin enough. So he sliced them really, really thin and created the potato chip. So there's different stories about how different inventions came about. A lot of times they're because we want to find a way to make things easier. The refrigerator, the dustpan, or we want to figure out a way to improve things. So it just gives us a way to look at things that we touch every day. When we look about the Super Soaker, a lot of people talk about Lonnie Johnson, but he used to work in Nissan, so he made the Super Soaker. Of course, he sold the invention, but it's just different things like that that we encounter every day that we don't realize that someone that looks like us made it.
And also the Ride of Pride emphasized on parent involvement. So the parents decide to take an active role in trying to encourage their son to do their homework. So it's teaching about Black inventors, but also parent involvement as well.
And I love that too, because when he went through, because at first he wasn't interested in doing his homework, he was kind of bored at school, and then it goes into his dad saying, let me figure out how to infuse some things, and taking that everyday stuff from the ironing board to, like you said, the fire hydrant, the mop, the broom, the dust plant. And, you know, the necessity is the mother of invention. Yes. And I don't know if one of the previous episodes, I interviewed Karen Parsons, who was Hillary Banks of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Mm-hmm. And we talked about a lot of those things that, you know, even during slavery, they didn't give them the tools they needed to do the job. They had to be creative and inventive to do the back-breaking work that they had to do. And so I think it's so important that the character in the book began to take an interest, because his father was showing him in every step of the way there was someone that looked like him that created all the things that are around us today.
Yes.
And one thing that you said that was interesting that we talked about a little earlier was the fact that, like, a lot of times, because a lot of the inventions that you mentioned in the book were actually post-slavery, so maybe late 1800s and things of that nature. So do you think that possibly during slavery that there were inventions by Black people, but they're slave owners may have just taken credit for those things?
Most definitely. I know a lot of times that we weren't allowed to have rights, or we weren't allowed to even obtain or apply for patents. I know one story that's really made a lot of news lately was the Uncle Nearest story. We know Uncle Nearest had a tie with Jack Daniels. So it was discovered that he was actually the one that created the recipe for Jack Daniels. So now his family are fighting like, this is ours. We can have our own. And he was the one who taught him the way. So there are plenty of stories that we know, and the only reason we'll probably find out about is because their family members are going to share the stories. Because of course they couldn't apply for patents, they couldn't get be able to get the namesakes of the things they invented, but they probably have documents that were written, or family histories or stories that are passed on, and that's the only way they're going to get that just do justice for them to be able to claim what is rightly theirs.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much of that's history that is glossed over, or that we don't get the credit for. And so your book really does highlight and emphasize some of those things. And then it's a family affair. Like, your dad is the illustrator, you're the co-authors. I love that it's a family story. It's something that not only kids can learn from, but adults can learn from, because there was a lot of things that I learned from reading the book. So I just want to thank you, ladies, and applaud you for stepping up and doing that. What made you decide to step into that arena and say, I want to be an author, and where has it taken you since?
So for me, it wasn't necessarily having a desire to become an author, but just wanting to tell the stories. I know that may sound weird, but that was my main purpose, just sharing information, because as we mentioned earlier, a lot of information is being lost in the history books. So unless we research our own history, it's a lot of information we do not know about. So I just want to share information and tell different stories.
And for me, it's more so to leave a legacy. So to have something that to can say that was ours, even once we're long and gone. But it kind of adding to what Yvonne just said, you'll be surprised how many conversations I have with people where they don't want to share our history with their children. And I find it disheartening. I know, we don't want to have Black History Month just to be centered around slavery and what they call the struggles tales. But we do need to have some way to make us say, okay, this is history, this is what happened, but this is also what we should be proud of, the contributions we have given to society that we use every day that people don't acknowledge. And it makes me think about a video I've seen on social media that was like, what would be a day in the life without African American inventions? And to think about it, you couldn't even get in your car because you wouldn't have the certain motor parts to your motor. You wouldn't even be able to keep your food because the refrigerator wouldn't even be active. You wouldn't even be able to drive because you wouldn't have traffic lights. So I'm thinking spark plug. I'm sorry, the spark plug. So it's different things that we have or we use every day. You wouldn't have shoes because the shoe lasting machine wouldn't have been invented. So different things we have every day. So if you want to say take away everything African American contributed to society, go ahead and see how far you get.
Yeah, it's very true. You're right about that. So, and it's amazing to me that we are really not aware of our history. But again, if you go back, and a lot of history books gloss over the truth.
Yes.
They gloss over what really happened, and they frame it in a way to make it not seem as bad as it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so our kids, and even us growing up, didn't get a true depiction of what that time was like. Or even as Yvonne said, we were speaking earlier, as it relates to coronavirus today, the Spanish flu was something of that time frame. Yvonne, did you want to speak on that?
Yes. So once coronavirus started, they started talking about the Spanish flu. But prior to that, I didn't know anything about the Spanish flu. So I researched the Spanish flu, and some of the events are parallel to the coronavirus. They also had no maskers. They opened up too soon. The president at that time also caught the Spanish flu. And I was under the assumption the Spanish flu was because it started in Spain. But Spain was the first country who told about the virus. The Americans didn't want to tell about the virus because they wanted to continue fighting the war. So I thought that was interesting, just the several parallels and how history repeats itself. So I was mainly looking at the research. Okay, they endured the Spanish flu for 2 years and 2 months. So how long do we have with COVID-19?
Yes. Yes.
And they didn't have vaccines. They used gauze as masks. I thought that was weird. You know, they would just wrap them around them as a mask.
Oh, so they were looking like mommies walking around. But I mean, I think again, necessity being the mother of invention, and those things that we had to really think of, like history repeating itself, as you said. I would have, you know, a lot of us didn't know, you know, we went as far back, I think, as the yellow fever epidemic here in Memphis where we live. So we knew about that. But absolutely, hopefully we don't go more than, you know, 2 years. We're coming up on it, you know, so hopefully we don't go, you know, too much longer, and that we can open back up and that we can get kind of back to normal, because I miss you guys, I want to hug you and all that stuff. And then, you know, I just think about how things have changed so much, and how, you know, what was the way that they had to adapt versus how we were having to adapt. And then, you know, they didn't have the technology that we had, that we have now. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I can bring up a point about my grandmother in conversation. She mentioned that her mother had the Spanish flu, which was odd because she said her mother was afraid to really go out because her friend kept inviting her to come visit her. She's like, "No, I'm not coming over there." But my great grandmother ended up getting it anyway. But of course she survived. But I thought that was interesting.
And just kind of piggyback on you talking about technology, even during these times, I know people definitely, because I do miss my friends, I do miss going out, but this has allowed me the opportunity also to slow down. But I think this also, just piggyback on families, I think this allowed an opportunity for families to be closer to their each other. I've noticed even with my parents, a lot of them are becoming more involved with their schoolwork because they really didn't have an understanding or a clue what their students were doing while they were at school. So them being at home, they can be like, "Oh, okay, I see you're playing around. Why is your camera not on? Why are you not being engaged? Or what do I need to do because I don't want my child to fall behind?" Or they're being more one-on-one with their students. We had a spelling bee the other day where the parents like, "You better spell that word right, boy." You know, so it was fun at the time, but you know, in honesty, in another situation, would they even been able to come to the spelling bee to support their child? So I see the negative, but I also see the positive. And we're looking at parents becoming more engaged, parents doing more things at home, parents being more involved with their students, and just having more family time. So kind of picking back on what our book is about, is parents being able to get more involved with what their students are doing at home and then their education and their personal lives, because the story is based on Jaden. Jaden wanted to play basketball. He wasn't bothered about his homework assignment. So his dad's like, you know, now we got to figure out the way to make this engaging and interactive and make him want to do it on his own.
So do you think, and that's a great point too, and I've heard both sides of the argument for the virtual learning and being at home. Well, I do think that's an excellent point as far as bringing families together. The technology has allowed parents to be more engaged, more active, and more in tune to what their kids are doing. And so that's a great segue into talking about Yvonne's new book as well. Yvonne, you have a book that you've written called Manifested Dreams. Tell us what that's all about.
So Manifested Dreams is about a family that discovers their history dating back to 150 years. So what inspired me to write this story is, oddly enough, I'm not talking about The Underground, but I was watching The Underground, which was my favorite show a while ago. I know they started showing it again, but back then it was my favorite show. And they did a whole show on the little boy's perspective of life during that time. So when I started writing, I first wanted to write it as a children's book, but I addressed the Memphis Massacre, the Red Summer, when enslaved people in Tennessee were freed, and that wasn't until 1864. And we were under the impression, okay, the Emancipation Proclamation freed all the enslaved people, which is not true. So Tennessee enslaved people weren't free until 1864. And what was life like that since then? So reason why I titled it Manifested Dreams, because the first character that they found was an enslaved girl named Sally. And she used to dream about what would my life be like if I can live like, their master, Miss Jane. So she wasn't able to see it, but it was manifested through her children years on down the line. So I just want to highlight several historical events, but from the character's perspective. So all the historical events are true. In the appendix, like certain things that are more recent, I changed the character's name, but I did reference them in the appendix. And I just wanted people to know the history, some of the historical facts, like you said, we don't really talk about.
And I noticed it was told through the story of a family and kind of their history as well, traveling through the years and history of itself. And to really go back 150 years is rare for African Americans to be able to trace their lineage and that sort of thing. And I know as recent as 2007, when I moved back to Memphis, I began to start doing some genealogy with my family and was able to go back as far as maybe my grandparents' parents on both sides. So, to find out, there was, there is someone in our family. They say this, there's my great grandfather's father, was a white man, and they don't know who he was. I'm like, come on, y'all know. but again, they may not know. So it's hard to really, trace those things, but to hear those stories and then to hear firsthand from some of my great aunts and uncles about them growing up, about their parents. And the only thing I regret not doing was really tracing back or getting video of them talking or audio of them speaking and telling the stories, because that's another great form of storytelling that African Americans was an oral tradition for us, because we, most couldn't read and write, going that far back. So having the oral tradition is so important for us too. Do you all plan to any other books in the future or things that you have going on?
I've thought about a couple of books, but my thoughts about my books might not be the best ones. So I've been back and forth with that idea. So I kind of want to do like a fact fiction book based on a lot of events that have happened in my life. Just to kind of be like, not even really just a story into my life, but kind of like a way of being like an active diary, if that makes sense. Just to kind of get my story out and just have a way of like some type of way, like not say therapy, but just a way for me to release a lot of things that I've kept inside for some years. So I've thought about that, but I don't, I want my parents to also be able to read the book as well. So I just don't know how that's going to look. So yeah.
What about you, Yvonne?
I had an idea about I actually had two ideas. One was about a religious book, but the title, I don't think people would understand my title. So I'll put that on hold. And it wasn't anything anti-Christ. It was just, just being the true feeling of how sometimes Christians do feel, that people kind of shun, oh, you shouldn't think like that, or oh, you shouldn't feel like that. But like I said, I'll table that one. And maybe another children's book that focuses on multicultural things.
Yeah. Well, I want to encourage both of you to write everything that you want to write, because that is the part of being a creative. Everybody may not get it, but I'm telling you, somebody somewhere, and you will not believe how many people will get it and will be into what you're writing about. So, I mean, if Stephen King can write about what he writes about, and, I'm all for it. I want to get back into writing too. My first love was to be a novelist. And so I'm going to take some tips from you all. Matter of fact, any tips for budding writers and people who want to get more into storytelling, particularly around Black history or, history in general?
One tip and we've had to learn this the hard way is, keep pushing. There, especially like I said, this is like our second edition of the book. So when we first put the book out, we had relatives like, oh, that's cute. Okay. And we're pushing, we're trying, we're like, can you support us? Can you buy a book? At least tell people, we have relatives that have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids still, didn't purchase a book. So, but it was interesting because it's interesting how Memphis is connected. One of your previous participants, Kanji Anthony, actually we were on one of her news segments. She was our first news interview when we talked about the book. So after we were on the news, everybody like, oh, you have a book? Okay, we're going to share them. Like, this the same book.
10 years later.
10 years later. So what's different? So now we're on the news. Now you remember the book. So just don't be discouraged. Keep pushing. Don't let people be critics. I mean, don't listen to those critics or those people around you who discourage you, because a lot of people who really have been supportive of us are been people we've never met before, people we never know. I mean, our sorority sisters, friends, family members, people are just surrounding us, and it's just amazing. Like we've been supported by people that's not even close to us, or we don't know. So don't let people discourage you for what you want to do, because someone's going to support you. Someone's going to buy it. Even if they don't buy it, just a share is a help, because that's the one thing that people don't realize. If you just share my information, somebody's going to be interested. So that's one thing. Just push. Yvonne was pushing for us. Like, she was like, I'm about to hit all the newspapers. I'm going to hit the television stations. I'm going to hit, and we were being featured in Jackson, Mississippi. We were interviewed by 2 news stations here in Memphis. So we were being asked to come out to speak at different events and bookstores. So even if we sell 1 book or 30 or 50, it's still a sale, and that's an excitement, because we feel like now a new child or a new person is learning something they never known before.
So that's something I had to get over, because as Sonya stated earlier, in 2007 when we first released the book, I was all in my feelings, because I assumed people who supposed to be close to me, like she said, you have all the cheering. Why don't you buy at least 1 book? And I had to get over myself, and one person actually encouraged me. And after that, like Sonya said, I was like, because I hated rejection. And they was like, you're going to get rejected, but you got to keep pushing. So ever since then, that's what I've been doing. I've gotten a little down about the manifested dreams, but I say I'm not going to let that stop me, because you're going to have your highs and lows. But another suggestion is, we did a publishing company with the Ride of Pride, and with Minds, I did self-publishing, and you see more profits with self-publishing, because you know how many books you sell. You can look that information up, and with the Ride of Pride, we're like, okay, several people claim they bought our book. Well, I don't see any money. Yeah. So it's best to really, my personal opinion, it's best to do your own publishing. You just have to seek out an illustrator, seek out an editor. You may have to format it. With my situation, my cover, the person who created my cover was not from America. And I love the cover he created first, because it really coincided with what the book was about. But I was like, that's Keisha Knight Pullum. I can't put her on my book saying she my cousin. He said, I don't know what you talk about. I said, that's Rudy. Take her off. I had to totally change everything, because then I noticed another celebrity. And I was like, never mind. This is just too much back and forth. So I just picked the simple, you can't pick anybody with that cover.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right about every point that you made. Everybody, even those closest to you, will not support you, and you will be surprised. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm making my business to support those that are closest to me. Especially authors, because I'm a writer and I'm a lover of books. I, for the record, did purchase both books.
Thank you.
So I definitely want to support as much as possible, and gonna show you guys again. You can get Ride of Pride and Manifested Dreams on Amazon. All of their information will be in the show description and in the show notes on the audio side as well. So please go out and get these 2 books by 2 Black authors that are telling stories that are not only a value from a historic perspective, but educating us all in ways that we really need right now, because the truth is so, it's so hidden that we have to dig for it, and we have to want to know the truth and get to the bottom of it, not believe what just is told to us, but go out and really scratch the surface and dig as far as we can, to know what it was really like. And I think I'm going back to look at the Library of Congress has a lot of slave narratives on file that you can go back and hear or read in their own words what it was like to be a slave, to see the images of their backs beaten and scarred, and just that stuff sits with me to this day, like to see that and to know that. And when I studied the Middle Passage, like that changed my life. It literally changed my life in college to study the Middle Passage and know that people who look like me bones are sitting at the bottom of the ocean, or their lives are in unmarked graves somewhere right now, and their lives were just hard, beyond hard. Yeah.
So people should look at it. We're ancestors of survivors. So that's nothing to be ashamed of that. So we survived all of that, and we're still here. So how can you not try to be great or do the best that you can,
Right. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, okay, we made it. Like somebody in our lineage made it on that voyage.
Yeah.
Then another one made it through slavery. Then another one made it through, the next generation and the next issue. And that seed has made it to us.
Yes.
Who are we not, like you said, to be great and to inspire greatness in each other? So, ladies, I want to thank you for inspiring greatness in us all and leaving a legacy now. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And if you are interested, like I said, please visit Amazon to check out their books. Thank you for watching the SOAR Lifecast. You can find us on all anywhere you listen to podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, everywhere. And of course, you can watch the actual videos right here on YouTube. So I look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback, and to you purchasing those books. So until then, keep soaring.